when the CIA tried to hack the universe. In the archives, right next to the files on exploding goats and robotic dragonflies, there exists a declassified document so strange it makes MKUltra look like a yoga retreat. Its title is The Gateway Experience, and if you've ever wanted proof that the United States government once spent your tax dollars trying to hypnotize reality, like something straight out of Star Wars, this is it. Written in 1983 by Lieutenant Colonel Wayne M. McDonnell, the report doesn't just outline a plan to alter states of consciousness, it aims to throw them completely outside of space and time. The CIA didn't just want to read your mind, they wanted to launch it into the void of the cosmos. According to McDonnell, the Gateway Experience was a method of enhancing brainwaves and synchronizing both hemispheres of the brain into a single superbrain. Sounds appealing enough. Who wouldn't want to become Megamind without the oversized head? The goal of this superbrain was to allow a person to leave their body, slip free from time, and tap into the secret menu of the universe. As McDonnell described it, the Gateway Experience was a training system meant to increase brainwave strength, focus, and harmony, ultimately breaking free from all limits of space and time. Does it sound like the sales pitch of a guy selling magic mushrooms behind a 7-Eleven? Maybe, but McDonnell wasn't high. He was on the government payroll. Some parts of the report seem fairly down to earth. Hypnosis, meditation, biofeedback, all things you could try on a Yoga Friday. They're perfectly legal ways to relax or boost concentration. Even legendary director David Lynch swears by transcendental meditation, and he's still perfectly lucid, despite once making a film about a murderous rabbit. But then, the document takes a sharp turn into galactic brain territory. It brings up something called the holographic consciousness matrix, which suggests that humans are just three-dimensional projections interacting with a larger three-dimensional universe. Someone clearly flirted with the idea that we're living in the real-life matrix, and that each of us could unlock hidden abilities like Neo. The CIA, it seems, was trying to create its own version of Keanu Reeves. The report even flirts with the concept of reincarnation. It talks about eternal consciousness, evoking the image of an endless loop of reality that the soul or mind can never escape. However, there's no evidence the CIA was aiming to physically reincarnate anyone. TikTok, in its usual flair for exaggeration, took the part about consciousness existing beyond time and spun it into a full-blown reincarnation theory. Soon after, the Daily Mail jumped in with headlines like, "CIA confirms reincarnation is real." In reality, the report makes no such claim. The CIA merely expressed interest in whether consciousness persists after death, not in achieving full-on Buddha mode. Despite the ambition of building a superbrain capable of reshaping reality, the United States never ended up with a taxpayer-funded army of Professor X types astral projecting into enemy bases. No secret psychic ever cracked missile launch codes from the other side. If they had, America probably would have found bin Laden much sooner. Even McDonnell's report, despite all its cosmic swagger, proved nothing. Modern science still doesn't fully understand how consciousness works, let alone how to fold it like origami to open up new dimensions. Still, you have to give the CIA some credit. They tried. They swung for the interdimensional fence. And while they didn't produce any brainwave-powered space wizards, they did leave us with one fascinating document hunting for aliens with the James Webb Telescope. We are no longer just gazing up at the stars. Humanity is now listening, and for the first time, we are truly beginning the hunt for extraterrestrial life. The most powerful telescope ever built has turned its sights toward the ultimate cosmic mystery, asking the question, are we alone in the universe? In an unexpected twist, scientists have launched the greatest alien search in history. With the James Webb Space Telescope now fully operational, humanity has begun scanning deep into space in search of traces of life beyond Earth. We are no longer content simply to stargaze. We are looking for biosignatures, the chemical fingerprints of living organisms drifting in the atmospheres of distant worlds, light years away. Scientists are now trying to track down any distinctive scent aliens might leave behind across the galaxy. James Webb was not launched in 2021 just to be an ornament in orbit a million miles from Earth, far beyond the moon. It was built to peer back into the origins of the universe, to capture images of the most distant galaxies, and perhaps even to detect alien life. James Webb's special strength lies in spectroscopy, a technique that dissects light like a forensic expert, searching for gases such as methane, oxygen, and carbon dioxide, all of which are typically released by living organisms. On Earth, they come from plants, animals, and sometimes a taco feast. Out in the universe, finding these gases could mean something similar, a planet that may be harboring life. Scientists like Dr. Nicole Colon, an astrophysicist at NASA, are using James Webb to analyze exoplanets outside our solar system by measuring the light passing through their atmospheres. If you've ever seen sunlight streaming through a dusty window, revealing tiny floating specks you never knew were there, The principle is much the same, except James Webb is looking for the home of alien life instead of dust. And it's not the only technology in this hunt. Rovers on Mars are also searching for biosignatures, chasing down any evidence of life in the soil. But NASA can't send rovers to exoplanets. They're simply too far away. Instead of robots with sampling tools, James Webb acts like a remote detective. It searches for habitable zones, or Goldilocks zones, regions around a star that are not too hot and not too cold, potentially suitable for life. When one of these zones is found, James Webb continues to analyze the atmospheres of planets in the region to check for signs of life. The challenge is that starlight often interferes with the data. Massive stars emit so much radiation that analyzing atmospheric gases becomes difficult. For that reason, James Webb often focuses on planets orbiting red dwarf stars smaller, dimmer stars that don't overwhelm its instruments, like a stadium floodlight mounted on a truck. Even with this approach, the risk of a false alarm remains. For example, methane could be a sign of alien life, or it could simply come from an unusual volcano. That's why James Webb doesn't rush to judgment. It gathers data samples, compares signals, and waits for the day when the numbers start whispering something undeniable. We want proof of alien life, and James Webb will have to deliver it. But even if it doesn't find any, that's perfectly fine. James Webb is not the final chapter of this journey. It's the opening act of a new season of discovery. No matter how advanced it is, it wasn't built to provide absolute proof of life. It is more like a giant cosmic observation post, enormous eyes in the depths of space, scanning for noteworthy signals, marking suspicious planets, and telling scientists where to investigate next. And it has already begun proving its worth. James Webb has mapped cosmic structures never before seen, revealed galaxies forming just after the Big Bang, and brought us closer than ever to the birth of the first stars. It is delivering groundbreaking discoveries in the most positive sense of the term, and one day it will be replaced by something even more extraordinary, perhaps a telescope capable of directly viewing the surfaces of distant worlds. James Webb may not give us the final answer, but it is the first telescope ever built with the serious goal of finding it. It isn't hunting UFOs, it is scanning reality itself, gathering signals that might force humanity to rewrite its place in the universe. Graham Hancock's strange theory on Easter Island. 1,000 massive stone heads, one great mystery. Easter Island, an isolated landmass in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, home to 1,000 Moai statues that look as though they've just seen your search history. For centuries, these colossal figures have puzzled archaeologists. Most experts agree they were carved by the Polynesians roughly 900 years ago. Then came Graham Hancock, the king of alternative history, bursting through the window of academic consensus to declare, actually, these statues are more than 11,000 years old. He believes they were built by a lost civilization that arrived a full 10,000 years before the Polynesians. According to Hancock, Easter Island was once home to a mysterious and advanced community that emerged 12,000 years ago, right as the last ice age was coming to an end. His key piece of evidence? Bananas. He points to the remains of banana plants dating back 3,000 years earlier than the arrival of the Polynesians. Since bananas don't grow naturally on the island, someone must have brought and cultivated them. Hancock also cites the construction techniques as proof. The Moai are placed on stone platforms called AHU. These platforms bear an uncanny resemblance to ancient structures found in other parts of the world, where stones are fitted so tightly, it seems as though aliens might have done the work. Hancock argues that this suggests the Moai and the AHU were built by different cultures. However, Dr. Dale Simpson Jr., an archaeologist who has conducted on-site research, warns that Hancock is cherry-picking fragments of data and overextending his conclusions. The majority of scholars maintain that the Polynesians arrived around the year 1200, developed a complex society, and carved the Moai to honor their ancestors, moving them with ropes, sledges, and ceremonial effort. Hancock doesn't deny the Polynesians' skill. He simply believes they came after another civilization and inherited what was left behind. Whether you side with academia or Hancock's Hidden History Club, one thing is certain: Easter Island has yet to reveal all of its secrets. The cities of the dead of Lycia. Would you like to be buried in a cliffside tomb, basking in blazing sunlight? The Lycians thought it was perfect. They didn't just bury their dead, they elevated them. This ancient people turned entire mountainsides into hanging cemeteries, carving elaborate tombs into sheer rock faces, as if death itself were part of the real estate market. These necropolis cities tower over towns in modern-day Turkey, looking down on the living with the disapproving gaze of a fussy ant. They're everywhere on beaches, behind cafes, even in the middle of traffic roundabouts. The Lycians honored the dead by making them part of the urban landscape. If you think Rome has history on every street corner, the city of Fethiye has a sarcophagus right in the middle of a roundabout. So who were the Lycians, and why were they so particular about death? Let's rewind about 2,000 years. They weren't just cliff tomb carvers, they were political pioneers. Their democratic federation even inspired parts of the United States Constitution. Long before America existed, the Lycians were electing representatives and settling local disputes with a strong sense of civic duty. While their political system faded into history, their fascination with death remained etched in stone. Tombs, dating back to the 5th century BCE, are often the only surviving remnants of Lycian cities. Their homes, palaces, and public buildings have vanished, but the tombs still stand among the brush, sometimes serving as shelter for goats or as a backdrop for sunburned tourists taking sunset photos. The reason for burying their dead at such heights remains an open question. This is the greatest mystery of Lycian civilization, one of the second-tier networks of the ancient world. Archaeologist Dr. Catherine Draycott of Durham University has studied these stone cities of the dead for years, yet she still isn't certain why they were built so high. Perhaps to bring the dead closer to the heavens, or to keep them far from the underworld, or maybe just to stop grave robbers who weren't good at climbing. No one knows for sure, but Catherine notes that constructing these monuments was brutally difficult. Workers had to haul materials up nearly vertical cliffs, with just the tomb lids weighing several tons each. How they managed it is still a mystery. Honestly, if you have a theory, share it, because the question remains unanswered. Slave graves, found on the property of an American president. A burial ground for enslaved people has been discovered on the estate of a former US president. They were African slaves who died on the plantation of a man whose name you definitely know, Andrew Jackson, the 7th president of the United States. Jackson owned a plantation in Tennessee. From 1804 until the end of the Civil War in 1865, at least 28 enslaved individuals died there. Until now, no one knew where they were buried. The Andrew Jackson Foundation has announced this grim discovery. Ground-penetrating radar revealed 28 bodies beneath the soil, including small graves for children and infants. The discovery was made with the help of archaeologist James Green. Late last year, James was called to the property known as the Hermitage. After workers cleared the trees, he walked the land, searching for depressions in the ground, signs of possible graves. Once a likely cemetery location was identified, ground-penetrating radar confirmed the presence of bodies below. While 28 were confirmed, there are probably more, hidden by a dense tangle of roots that blocked the scans. The graves lie beside a creek, less than 300 meters from the former president's mansion. Jackson was not the only president to support and participate in slavery. More than a dozen of America's earliest presidents owned slaves. In recent years, researchers have worked to locate the burial sites of those enslaved at former presidential homes. At the Hermitage, just a short walk from where Jackson lived, visitors can still see the cabins where enslaved people once lived, offering a glimpse into the harsh conditions they endured. At the time of his death, Jackson legally owned around 150 human beings, the CIA, a psychic, and the Ark of the Covenant. Once upon a time, but in a top-secret file, the sharpest intelligence minds in America looked at a map of the Middle East, pointed to it, and said, "Hey, you know what? We need a psychic to find the Ark of the Covenant." And then they actually did it. They used a psychic to try to locate the legendary biblical relic in the real world. You know, the one, the gold-plated chest said to contain the 10 Commandments. The artifact with face-melting powers that appeared at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark before being shoved into a giant government warehouse. Except this time, it wasn't a movie. This was a declassified CIA report describing how they wanted to use a remote viewer, in other words, a psychic, to find the holiest box on Earth. Back in the 1980s, while President Reagan was urging Gorbachev to tear down this wall, the CIA was busy launching the human mind across the planet, sometimes even to Mars, through a secret psychic spy program called Project Sunstreak. And this wasn't a parlor trick. This was a taxpayer-funded operation. The CIA believed that with the right training, certain people could transcend time and space to locate things like Soviet nuclear stockpiles, missing hostages, and in this case, one of the most sacred and feared religious artifacts of all time. Unlike their Hack the Universe attempts to create a superbrain, this time the CIA had a specific, earthbound target: find an artifact. Their method was to hand a person a set of random coordinates with no other information and tell them to project themselves there, basically Google Earth for sorcerers. Sounds impossible, right? If I gave you a few coordinates and told you to focus hard, could you mind teleport to the exact location on the planet? Probably not. But the CIA thought, oh, this is doable. And then they almost pulled it off. The central figure in this mysterious treasure hunt was remote viewer number 032, a person I imagine had nerves of steel and only a vague idea of what he was involved in. When asked to describe what he saw at the assigned coordinates, he began talking about a mysterious container within another container. It was made of wood, covered in gold, with 6 carved figures of winged angels. Around it were people speaking Arabic, and it was buried underground, damp, dark, and chilling. The intriguing part is that 032 had no idea what he was looking for. He was simply told to describe what he saw, and what he described was straight out of both Sunday school legend and Indiana Jones' worst nightmare. So, where is the Ark of the Covenant now? According to the CIA file, the psychic believed it was being guarded by powerful entities. Anyone who tried to open it without sufficient spiritual virtue would be destroyed by the protectors with a force unknown to mankind. In plain terms, the document claimed the Ark was guarded by divine beings, and that if you dared to open it, they would vaporize you with a blast of holy energy. The report strongly implied the Ark was hidden somewhere in the Middle East, possibly beneath a domed temple, an image the psychic sketched after seeing it in a vision. But without exact coordinates, the US government never launched a recovery mission. Did they truly believe the psychic had seen the Ark? The report described the session as a success, but the project appears to have been abandoned. If it really was successful, why stop? And why release this now, sparking global curiosity? If this is what they're willing to make public, then what they're still hiding might be the biggest mystery of all. Raiders of the Lost Trash Pile. In the sun-baked dust of northern Iraq, archaeologists uncovered something that could make Indiana Jones choke on his fedora. No, they didn't find the legendary stargates, but they did find a treasure trove of ancient clay tablets, monumental ruins, and a game board dating back nearly 4,000 years. Apparently, the ancient Mesopotamians had their own version of Saturday family game night. Leading the excavation is Tiffany Ely Spadoni, a University of Central Florida professor with a knack for unearthing forgotten cities. The site is Kurd Kabristan, a name that sounds like a secret boss fight in an RPG, but is actually a massive archaeological jackpot near Erbil. Think mudbrick palaces and ancient plumbing. This place is so old that its ruins were buried before the alphabet even existed. One of the juiciest finds so far is a clay tablet dug up from a debris-choked corridor in the Lower Town Palace. The tablet is still being deciphered, but early hints suggest it might tell of war, upheaval, and a day so catastrophic it's hard to imagine possibly an account of the city's downfall. But what was this city exactly? Who built it? What was its name? And why did it fall into ruin? Don't get your hopes up too high, but archaeologists suspect this could be the legendary city of Kabra, mentioned in ancient Babylonian texts, like the Stele of King Dedusha. For centuries, scholars have believed Kabra was real, but had no idea where it was. Now, they may have finally found it, but of course, there's no "Welcome to Kabra" sign buried under the sand. Everything has to be pieced together from fragments of clues. So far, most excavation work has focused on the northwest residential quarter. They've uncovered houses with drainage systems, courtyards, decorated pottery, and animal bones from both livestock and game. The residents here dined like royalty and decorated their homes as if they had a Pinterest account. Evidence shows that Mesopotamia's middle class lived in comfort as far back as 1800 BCE. According to Ely Spadoni, this dig could help reveal the everyday life historians often overlook, skipping over kings and grand rituals to learn how ordinary people lived. Did they sleep in? Where did they buy their sandals? What did they do on weekends? Did they have a gym? A library? And that game board suggests they once gathered to play games, a pastime not so different from humans today. Murder in the Ice Age. Just how violent were our Stone Age ancestors? Let's set the scene. 17,000 years ago in the Southern Alps, in what is now Italy. Snow is melting, ibex are frolicking, and humans are returning to land newly freed from ice like thawing a prehistoric dinner in the microwave. Life is harsh, but manageable. You've got your stone tools, your seasonal camp, and a decent shot at not being eaten by something with tusks. And then suddenly, without warning, you're hit in the thigh by a projectile. This isn't the latest gritty Netflix crime drama set in a snowbound prehistoric village. It's a real-life Stone Age whodunit. The victim is a young man whose remains were discovered in a rock shelter called Riparo Tagliente in Italy's Lessini Mountains. He has been lying in a shallow grave for over 17 millennia, both literally and figuratively, until now. Thanks to CSI-level science and some very suspicious gouges in his femur, archaeologists now believe they know what happened. He wasn't just dead, he was hunted down and killed. New research, published in scientific reports by paleoanthropologist Vittorio Pasquarelli and colleagues, used 3D scanning and microscopy to determine the marks on his bone were impact scars from a projectile weapon, the Stone Age equivalent of finding a bullet hole. Scientists concluded this was a fatal wound from a high-speed flint weapon, the sniper rifle of its time. But who was the killer? And what was the motive? We'll never know for sure, but there are clues. Around 17,000 years ago, Europe was warming after the last glacial maximum. Valleys opened up, game was plentiful, resources were abundant, and land was suddenly available to fight over. The victim and his group were among the first wave of people to enter mountain regions, newly freed from ice places no humans had set foot in for tens of thousands of years. But they weren't alone. And history shows that when people crowd together, blades tend to come out. Was he caught in a turf war, a hunter turned prey, or just a passerby who walked into the wrong gorge at the wrong time? What is certain is that the attack was planned. Flint projectile weapons weren't common fighting tools back then. They were specialized weapons for long-range ambushes. This was clearly an assassination. What makes this discovery groundbreaking is how early it is. At 17,000 years old, this victim may be one of the earliest known cases of advanced projectile weapons being used in human-on-human violence. In other words, this is the oldest drive-by ever found. A non-natural object is heading toward Earth. From the swirling black hole of the internet, a new cosmic conspiracy theory has emerged and gone viral worldwide. The James Webb Space Telescope, humanity's $10 billion eyes on the deep universe, has allegedly spotted a non-natural object flying straight toward Earth. That's right. According to online rumors, aliens may have finally answered the universe's version of "You up?" messages Earth has been sending. But when they get here, what will they say? It all started on September 17, 2024, when the YouTube channel Psicoactivo, a popular outlet for behind-the-scenes alien content, posted a video. In it, they claimed JWST had detected a large, bright, suspicious object near a distant star system. According to the podcast, the object changed direction mid-flight, something inanimate objects simply don't do. If you throw a rock off a bridge, it doesn't stop, turn, and circle before hitting the water. When an object in space changes course, it's often assumed there's intelligence guiding it, who or whatever that might be. Could it be a star on an intergalactic road trip, a comet, or a diplomatic mission from Alpha Centauri? TikTok says it's a spaceship, one sitting 10 light years away and closing the distance fast. It turned like it had just received a distress call from Earth and immediately set course to investigate. Sounds thrilling, right? But remember, all this info comes from social media, not NASA or the European Space Agency, both of which are notoriously slow to talk about things like this. Online claims say members of the US Congress have been briefed, the NSA is in panic mode, and the Department of Defense is updating emergency protocols. But there's no evidence, no satellite imagery, no leaked emails, not even a blurry 240p photo. That hasn't stopped online conspiracy theorists from suiting up like it's Independence Day. Content creators across platforms are claiming humanity has been handed an eviction notice from the cosmos. One viral video with over 2 million views confidently explains orbital mechanics, as if the narrator had been texting aliens personally, when in reality, we know nothing. Even US Representative Andre Carson, who chaired the 2022 hearing on unidentified aerial phenomena, got pulled into the frenzy when a press group in Washington, D.C. asked for his thoughts. His silence struck some as suspicious, while others figured he simply didn't want to waste time on nonsense. Some suggest he stayed quiet because he hadn't yet thought up a cover story. But let's pause and add some reason to the fever. Snopes and other fact-checkers have dug in. Here's the result. There's been no official statement from NASA, the JWST team, or any government agency supporting the rumor. The original YouTube video offered no verifiable source, and James Webb isn't even capable of tracking object movements at this scale without triggering headlines across the entire astronomy community within hours. Cleopatra has been found at last. Breaking news from Egypt. A statue has just been uncovered in a tomb believed to belong to Cleopatra, revealing the true face of the ancient queen. For the first time, scientists think they know what Cleopatra actually looked like. This could settle the long-running debate over her legendary beauty. Some ancient historians claimed Cleopatra was the most beautiful woman in history, while some modern scholars argued she was short, possibly plump, and even unattractive, with a hooked nose like a witch. Enter Dr. Kathleen Martinez, the brilliant archaeologist I've mentioned before, who has been searching for Cleopatra's tomb for 20 years. Recently, she joined a joint research team of Egyptian and Dominican scientists surveying the Taposiris Magna Temple west of Alexandria. Dr. Martinez has long insisted this could be the burial place of Cleopatra 2,000 years ago. As we know, Cleopatra was the last queen of the Nile, the final true pharaoh of ancient Egypt. After her death in 30 BCE at the age of 39, Egypt became Roman territory. Cleopatra and her lover Mark Antony were buried in secret, possibly within this temple, a site with ruins sitting atop a vast underground maze. Martinez herself discovered a tunnel over 1,200 meters long beneath the temple. She believes Cleopatra's remains were secretly moved from her palace through this tunnel to be laid to rest in a hidden location. In her years of searching, Martinez has found many things but never the tomb. Most recently, she uncovered a white marble statue depicting a woman wearing a royal crown. She believes this is a bust of Cleopatra, a priceless discovery. This is especially significant because no bust has ever been definitively confirmed to be Cleopatra. Even coins bearing her likeness aren't reliable, as archaeologists think the engravers deliberately made her look unattractive to tarnish her reputation. Yes, there's a bust in the Vatican Museum, but it has never been authenticated. Another bust, once in the Altus Museum, was dismissed as an ordinary Roman woman. This bust at Taposiris Magna could be the most important piece yet, seemingly depicting a woman of stunning beauty, potentially confirming the legend that Cleopatra was truly breathtaking. If Dr. Martinez finds Cleopatra's secret tomb to confirm this, it will be a discovery for the ages. Every day, I'm waiting for the news that Cleopatra has finally been found. The mysterious rock carvings of Canada. Hidden deep beneath the forests of Ontario lies a massive slab of stone that has puzzled, intrigued, and sometimes infuriated archaeologists for decades. This is one of Canada's hardest secrets, both literally and figuratively. The slab stretches over 150 feet in length, spans more than 100 feet in width, and is completely covered in ancient carvings. There are roughly 900 figures etched deeply into the limestone. Indigenous people call the site Kinu Mag Vapkong, meaning the rocks that teach. The outside world knows it as the Peterborough petroglyphs. The carvings are a blend of the familiar and the bizarre. Around 300 of them can be recognized as people, animals, shamans, performing rituals, boats, geometric shapes, and symbols that could be maps, messages, or ancient emojis. The other 600 are completely indecipherable, like a doctor's handwriting, but chiseled into bedrock. Generations of scholars have tried to decode them, and all have failed. The most common theory is that the Algonquian people carved them sometime between 900 and 1400 CE. But dating rock art is as tricky as guessing someone's age from a baby photo. Some of the carvings are so weathered that experts believe they could be thousands of years older. The place has an eerie atmosphere. Many visitors claim to hear whispers, voices, or singing. Locals say the site is haunted by the spirits of ancient indigenous people who lost their land. Or maybe, just maybe, Bronze Age gods had some free time and decided to strike up a conversation. What makes the mystery harder to explain is that some of the carvings depict boats and not just canoes. The Algonquian people only built birch bark canoes, but the boats in these petroglyphs resemble the solar ships of ancient Egypt, once carved into temple walls and buried alongside pharaohs, like at the mortuary temple of Ramses III around 1100 BCE. Others look like vessels from the 9th century BCE and strikingly resemble ancient Scandinavian rock carvings thousands of miles away that depict boats in a similar style. This leads to two possibilities. Either there was a mind-boggling maritime exchange program 3,000 years ago, or history has completely forgotten the strangest voyage the world has ever known. War, space wormholes, and weapons of mass destruction. Even weapons of mass destruction can go missing, in a dark corner of the internet so deep you'd need spelunking gear to reach it. There's a theory that the real reason the United States invaded Iraq twice was to seize and control ancient stargates capable of opening portals to alien worlds. In this telling, Saddam Hussein wasn't just a dictator, he was a galactic gatekeeper, possibly stockpiling technology from another planet and ready at a moment's notice to call in off-world reinforcements. Independence Day would look tame by comparison. Let's rewind. The First Gulf War broke out on August 2, 1990, when Iraq brazenly rolled into Kuwait as if it were its own territory. This led to Operation Desert Storm in January 1991, when the US and its allies launched a full-scale assault. Fast forward to March 20th, 2003, boom, the Second Gulf War begins. This time, it came with a more PR-friendly name, Operation Iraqi Freedom. The official story was that Saddam might have weapons of mass destruction. The reality, let's just say nobody ever found a nuclear bomb. When there were no weapons to justify the invasion, conspiracy theorists immediately put on their tinfoil hats and asked, so what was the real motive? Obviously, it was the Stargate's wormhole-like gateways that could connect to far-off worlds like an intergalactic subway. Are Stargates real? Most scientists say no, but a few scholars think maybe. The problem is, in Egyptian, Sumerian, and Babylonian mythology, there are stories that sound suspiciously like accounts of ancient humans interacting with alien civilizations. Many believe that ancient cultures were given access to alien technology, and some of it was left behind when the visitors returned home, buried in places like Egypt and Iraq. One theory claims Saddam found a dormant Stargate, and the US knew about it. Naturally, America wanted it for itself, or at least didn't want Iraq to have it. And so, Desert Storm 2.0 happened in 2003. One of the loudest voices on this cosmic podium is Dr. Michael Salla, a UFO researcher and expert in galactic geopolitics. He's even suggested that alien technology could originate from a mysterious ninth planet at the edge of our solar system, but that's another wormhole for another day. If, for a moment, we assume this isn't a rejected X-Files script, then what happened to these alleged Iraqi stargates? There are three main theories. 1. They were seized and secretly moved to top-secret facilities like Area 51, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, or some underground black site owned by Walmart. 2. They were destroyed deemed too dangerous for humanity's wobbly toddler stage of interstellar diplomacy. Wiping out the tech would prevent a galaxy-wide incident. 3. They were never found at all and still lie buried under the Iraqi desert, like a sci-fi version of Aladdin's cave, waiting for someone with enough authority or curiosity to stumble across them. Let's be clear, there's zero evidence for any of this. No declassified documents, no whistleblowers, no alien selfie sticks. There isn't even an intern whispering in the Pentagon hallway. Don't tell anyone I told you this. Even Saddam's inner circle people with every reason to spill the beans on a magic gate after his fall never said, "Oh, by the way, Saddam had a portal to space and other dimensions." With a secret this big, you'd expect someone to talk, but no one ever has. Are stargates real? There's certainly a scientific possibility, but whether one's hidden under a pyramid in Iraq? That remains an open question. Part 13. An ancient amulet. An ancient amulet discovered north of the Alps may help explain the rapid spread of Christianity. In 2018, near Frankfurt am Main in Germany, archaeologists uncovered the skeleton of a man who was buried wearing an amulet. Analysis revealed that both the skeleton and the amulet date to the 3rd century CE, just over 100 years after Jesus was crucified. This is the earliest Christian artifact ever found north of the Alps. From a time when the religion was thought not to have reached the area, the amulet is inscribed with 18 lines of Latin text, including the names of Jesus, God, and Saint Titus. This discovery proves that its owner was a Christian during a period when believers were still persecuted by the Roman Empire. It raises a question. How did the faith manage to cross the treacherous Alps and spread into the lands of the Celts and so-called barbarians in just over a century? Cracking the universe's biggest dispute. A tiny number is splitting the universe apart. For more than a decade, cosmologists have been locked in a feud rivaling Marvel vs. DC fandom wars, and it's all over the expansion rate of the universe. At the heart of it is a discrepancy of just 3 meters per second in how we measure the rate at which the cosmos and everything in it is stretching outward. Sounds trivial, right? Like the difference between a brisk walk and a slow jog. But in astrophysics, that gap is enough to trigger existential crises, scientific duels, and countless sleepless nights. Because if some scientists are right, then the math we've been teaching for generations is wrong, and the universe isn't expanding the way the textbooks say it is. Fortunately, the James Webb Space Telescope is here to play referee. The most powerful cosmic detective ever built has just dropped a data bomb that might settle the matter. About 13.8 billion years ago, the universe exploded into being what science calls the Big Bang, with the key word being theory. Notice candid and when it counter self-find. Since then, the universe has been expanding like a pair of pants after Thanksgiving dinner. This expansion rate is measured by something called the Hubble constant. The problem is, there are 2 ways to measure the Hubble constant. The first is the CMB method, looking back in time through the cosmic microwave background, the faint leftover light from the Big Bang. This gives a value of about 41 miles per second per megaparsec. The second is measuring distances to nearby galaxies in the modern universe. This yields a value of about 44 miles per second per megaparsec. The gap is small, but over nearly 14 billion years, it adds up to a massive difference on a cosmic scale. This is where James Webb comes in. A new study led by astrophysicist Wendy Friedman and her team at the University of Chicago used JWST's ultra-high resolution to double-check the method of measuring distances to nearby galaxies. When Friedman's group recalculated the Hubble constant using Webb data, they got about 43.5 miles per second per megaparsec, almost exactly in the middle of the old results. According to Friedman, the discrepancy might simply be a systematic measurement error, tiny inaccuracies from humans calculating cosmic distances. It's likely not a sign we need to rewrite all of physics or name some evil twin of dark energy. Either we've caught a measuring glitch or the universe is hiding something from us. The expansion rate of the universe is one of the most complex, mind-bending, and contentious issues in cosmology. Some even doubt it's expanding at all, because it's hard to wrap your head around 14 billion years of non-stop growth. So where's the edge of the universe? How can an edge even exist? Could the universe loop back on itself? Are we living inside a giant bubble? And if so, what's outside the bubble? Follow those questions far enough, and the human mind quickly finds itself in a maze with no exit. The mystery of HARP. Deep in the icy wilderness of Gakona, Alaska, miles from anywhere with decent Wi-Fi, stands a facility that looks like something a movie villain would build if DARPA gave him a blank check. Rows of antennas jut up from the snow like a metal field, blasting high-frequency radio waves into the sky for purposes the government insists are purely research-related. But plenty of people believe it's a mind control tool for manipulating the American public. Welcome to the kind of place where wearing a tinfoil hat is considered a sensible precaution. HARP stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Officially, it was created to study the ionosphere. Unofficially, according to rumors, it's the government's Swiss Army knife for ruling the shadow world. HARP was established in 1993, the same year Jurassic Park hit theaters. Coincidence? Maybe. But its origin story isn't as cinematic. Funded by the Air Force, the Navy, DARPA, and the University of Alaska Fairbanks, HARP was designed to manipulate the ionosphere in the name of science. Still, many feared the US was up to something else. In 1995, Finnish MEP Elizabeth Wren questioned the European Parliament about using military resources for environmental strategies translation. She was worried the US had just built a giant weather gun. Climate physicist and activist Rosalie Bertell warned that HARP was a military weapon. Nick Begich Jr., son of a congressman, went further, claiming HARP could trigger earthquakes, change the weather, and influence human thoughts, basically a modern MK-Ultra. And the CIA, at least on the surface, had nothing to do with it. But many believe that one day, declassified files will show the agency knew all about HARP's after-hours activities. In Truth and Innocence and Myself Enter, HARP conspiracy theories have since spun out into wild territory. Russian military magazines warned it could flip Earth's magnetic poles. Former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura claimed the US could control the weather and beam mind control rays into people's heads. Physicist Bernard Eastlund, whose patents inspired some HARP technology, suggested it might even shoot down satellites. Are any of these true? Scientists have tried to debunk them. A favorite conspiracy argument is that HARP's massive power proves it's doing something supernatural. But Stanford professor Umran Enan told Popular Science that HARP's power output is only a tiny fraction of a lightning bolt, nowhere near enough for the things it's accused of. Some say HARP's suspicion factor comes from the fact that nobody really understands what it does. Fair enough. Ionospheric research is complicated, and you practically need to be a rocket scientist to fully grasp it. In an effort to calm conspiracy chatter, HARP opened its doors to the public in 2015. The tours gave visitors a fascinating look at the facility, but didn't kill the rumors. So should you be worried that HARP is controlling minds or firing earthquake death rays? Probably not. Science doesn't back it, and if Earth's magnetic poles could really be flipped, it likely would have happened already. Still, keeping a tinfoil hat handy can't hurt, just in case they really do want to read your thoughts. A baby planet. Humanity still hasn't found the home world of alien hunters, but the James Webb Space Telescope keeps delivering snapshots of strange new worlds. If a boiling ocean planet was already impressive, the discovery in the Hydra constellation is even stranger. This is a baby planet so cute it could audition for a Pixar film. Just kidding, but seriously, NASA's cutting-edge observatory has just captured the very first direct image of an exoplanet playing with the dust around its star, sculpting what look like shimmering strands of cosmic spaghetti. Its name isn't exactly awe-inspiring, TWA-7b. The name may lack flair, but when you're 34 light-years from Earth and capable of sculpting dust rings like the Michelangelo of the cosmos, you can get away with it. TWA-7b has the mass of Saturn, but is far younger and running a mild fever, about 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Warm by Earth standards, but nothing compared to Venus, where temperatures soar to 885 degrees Fahrenheit. Despite its giant size, TWA-7b is still a child in cosmic terms. The star it orbits, TWA-7, is only 6.4 million years old, a newborn, compared to our 4.6 billion-year-old Sunday. What makes this discovery remarkable isn't just the planet's age, but the fact that it's been imaged directly. Of the more than 6,000 exoplanets NASA has recorded, the vast majority were detected indirectly through orbital shifts or changes in starlight, but TWA-7b shows up crystal clear in the lens, like snapping a high-res selfie with Bigfoot. To pull this off, James Webb used its secret weapon, the MIRI instrument, paired with a coronagraph. This setup works like a giant pair of sunglasses, blocking the star's blinding light to reveal the faint glow of nearby objects. That's when they found the baby planet. TWA-7b sits neatly in the gap of a dust ring around its star, as if it knew it was about to be spotted. Astronomers believe its gravity may be carving out this gap, shaping a cosmic donut with the planet in the missing bite spot. Even more intriguing, this could be the first evidence of a Trojan disk, a dust cloud gathering along a planet's orbit. Until now, the concept existed only in computer simulations, with no real-world proof. And that's not the only recent Trojan headline, this time involving a Trojan planet. In the PDS-70 system, scientists have found a massive dust cloud, twice the mass of the Moon, likely condensing into a planet. The twist? It shares its orbit with another planet around the same star. When complete, the two worlds will co-orbit in the same path, like a cosmic game of tag around their sun. Astrobiologist Olga Balsalobre-Ruza from Spain's Center for Astrobiology noted that co-orbiting planets were once considered unicorns of theory never before observed, but once again, the universe reminds us it's full of surprises. The CIA versus Fidel Castro. Forget everything you know about spies in sleek suits, gleaming pistols, and precision missions. When the CIA went after Fidel Castro, they didn't bring James Bond. They brought an entire Looney Tunes playbook. For over half a century, America's top intelligence agency, armed with an almost limitless budget and a sense of imagination straight out of Adult Swim at 3 in the morning, tried to kill one man and failed spectacularly. Not only did Castro survive every CIA assassination attempt, he lived to the age of 90 and died of natural causes. He kept smoking cigars, kept laughing in the face of the thousands of harebrained plots to take his life. He even once quipped, "If surviving assassination attempts were an Olympic sport, I'd win the gold medal." It all started with the infamous poisoned milkshake plot. You know the situation's absurd when killing a head of state revolves around dessert. The CIA discovered Castro's love for dairy ice cream, milkshakes, cheese. The plan: slip poison into a milkshake. They even brought in the mob, handing the deadly capsule to an operative posing as a cafe worker. But the capsule got stuck in the freezer, froze solid, and shattered when removed. And just like that, the plot crumbled undone by basic physics. That was perhaps the CIA's closest brush with killing Castro, but hardly the only one. Since he also loved cigars, they decided to turn one into a miniature bomb. In 1960, they laced an entire batch of cigars with enough botulinum toxin to wipe out a small city. Then, they lost the whole shipment. No one knows where it went, only that it never reached Castro. 2 failures in, the agency targeted another of Castro's passions, scuba diving. The new plan sounded like Mission Impossible meets farce. Step 1. Plant explosives inside an oversized seashell. Step 2. Place it where Castro liked to dive. Step 3. Hope he'd be drawn to shiny things like a magpie to a gold ring. Eventually, even the CIA scrapped the idea, it was just too ridiculous. They also tried to gift Castro a diving suit laced with tuberculosis bacteria in the air tank and covered in skin-eating fungus. It sounds like horror fiction, but it was real. Fortunately for Castro, lawyer James Donovan, tasked with delivering the suit, sensed something was off and swapped it for a clean one. The assassination attempt became an accidental free gift, and then there was the final boss of absurdity. According to sworn testimony before the Senate, the CIA seriously considered convincing Cubans that Castro was the Antichrist by staging the second coming of Jesus. The plan involved spreading rumors of Castro's demonic origins, then surfacing a US submarine offshore to fire flares into the sky, faking a divine halo. The hope was that devout Cubans would panic and overthrow him. The brainchild of Pentagon official Edward Lansdale, who may have read the Book of Revelation one too many times, the scheme was later denied by Lansdale, though a CIA operative testified it was real, just never executed. In the end, Castro lived on, laughing for decades, and died in 2016. The CIA, after all that, may well be the most bumbling assassins in history. Newly declassified files claim Hitler escaped to South America. And now, things get even stranger. Among the CIA's declassified archives lies a tidbit that stunned many. They once suspected Hitler didn't die, but fled to South America to live out his days. This is a real document, released in 2020, showing that even into the 1950s, US intelligence was still hunting the supposedly dead Adolf Hitler, and while they never caught him, they might have come close. The official story is that Hitler died in his Berlin bunker in April 1945, but his body was never publicly confirmed. Dental records are said to be the proof, but who verified them? And where are they now? Doubt led the CIA to focus on a luxury hotel in La Falda, Argentina, run by Nazi sympathizers. These owners were allegedly acquainted with Hitler and capable of hosting brunch for exiled fascists. In 1954, the CIA received a photo from Colombia showing a man named Adolf Scheller talking with Philip Citroën, a former SS officer. Citroën claimed to meet Hitler regularly. The agency suspected Scheller might be Hitler in disguise. They began tracking Scheller's haunts in Colombia, but by November 1955, the CIA admitted in a memo, It is possible that an enormous effort could be expended on this matter, with the possibility of only a very small result. In other words, we have no idea what's going on. For Maudie Man, jocks of newsmen. Things seemed to end there until 2024, when Argentine President Javier Milei ordered the release of all files on Nazi war criminals who had taken refuge in the country. Post-war Argentina was essentially an Airbnb for fascists. Adolf Eichmann and Josef Mengele both hid there, thanks to rat lines, secret escape routes, aided by a friendly government and certain shadow priests. The idea that Hitler could have been among them isn't far-fetched, especially since in the Scheller photo, the man still sported Hitler's iconic mustache. If you were trying to hide, shaving it off would be step one. But no, he kept it, and even kept the name Adolf. Whether imposter or the real Hitler, it was a bold move. Now, the world waits for Argentina to fully declassify the files. When that happens, this bizarre tale might explode, and you can be sure you'll hear about it on Origins Explained. The Boiling Planet. In stressful times, most people have dreamed of leaving Earth aboard a starship to find a new world. But if your destination is TOI 270d, that dream might quickly turn into a nightmare. 70 light-years away, this planet baffles astronomers not because of beauty, but because of extreme hostility. Depending on who you ask, it could be a hellish super-Earth drowning in boiling oceans, or a searing rock shrouded in steam so thick it could drown a black hole. Either way, moving there is a terrible idea. The James Webb Space Telescope, the universe's most powerful gold-plated gossip collector, was designed to catch starlight filtering through the atmospheres of distant worlds and spill their secrets. Now, it's delivered a real-life sci-fi nightmare. It's detected chemical signs of water vapor, methane, and carbon dioxide in TOI 270d's atmosphere, 3 ingredients that could mean a habitable world, or at least one covered in oceans. And where there are oceans, there's hope for life. Led by Professor Niku Madhusudan at the University of Cambridge, the team concluded that TOI 270d is likely a water world. In astronomy, this type is called a Haitian planet, an ocean-covered giant surrounded by a hydrogen-rich atmosphere. Sounds nice, but reality is harsher. Scientists warn the ocean's temperature could exceed 203 degrees Fahrenheit. Visiting would be like locking yourself inside a giant pressure cooker, unable to breathe, and baking under eternal sunlight. That's right, this planet never has night. TOI 270d is tidally locked, with one side always facing its star and the other trapped in perpetual darkness. Picture one hemisphere as a blazing beach full of over-tanned warriors, and the other as a realm of pale, ghost-like creatures. The day side would be a true inferno. If TOI 270d really is Haitian, it would be a vast ocean of scalding steam. But on the night side, temperatures might be milder, allowing liquid water to exist without boiling, perhaps even fostering life. After all, Earth has hosted life in extreme places, in boiling volcanic vents deep underwater, beneath Antarctic ice, or in lightless caves. Who's to say TOI 270d doesn't harbor strange marine species that thrive in both boiling and cooler zones? The Cambridge team's hopes rose when they found no trace of ammonia in the atmosphere. By chemical rules, a hydrogen-rich sky should contain ammonia, but since ammonia dissolves in water, its absence could mean an ocean below is absorbing it, and oceans mean potential life. Not everyone agrees. Professor Bjorn Benneke's group at the University of Montreal insists a liquid ocean is impossible. Their calculations put surface temperatures at over 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than lava, hotter than Venus, and hotter than any teenage romance. They argue the atmosphere isn't gentle sea mist, but a supercritical fluid where liquid and gas blur so much, even physicists get uncomfortable. It's less tropical paradise, more slimy monster planet from a mad scientist's lab. For now, even with our best telescopes, science remains divided. Is TOI 270d a giant water balloon from hell, or a molten steam rock with mood swings? Either way, everyone agrees James Webb is pulling back the curtain on the strangest corners of the cosmos. Until we have an answer, Earth remains the best place for a beach vacation. A mysterious new human species. A newly discovered human species is rewriting history. We were not alone in the past, and this raises the question of how many kinds of humans once walked the Earth. A team from the University of Hawaii and the Chinese Academy of Sciences has jointly studied and introduced a new human ancestor, Homo juluensis. If Homo juluensis is a mouthful, you can call them the big-headed people, the literal translation of the name. Researchers say they lived at the same time as Homo sapiens, but not in the same place. Scientists believe Homo juluensis appeared in Asia about 300,000 years ago, while Homo sapiens emerged in Africa around the same time. Were they our cousins? They evolved in parallel, but on opposite sides of the planet, like the Roman Empire and Imperial China existing at the same time. The difference is, We survived, while Homo juluensis went extinct about 50,000 years ago. The discovery comes from fossils found at 2 sites in China. Measuring their skulls, scientists realized this was a completely different species. Their heads were not only large, but thick. Neanderthals also had thick skulls, so there may have been some connection. Does big head mean big brain? Possibly. These ancient humans may have crafted stone tools, processed animal hides into clothing, and hunted wild horses to survive in the harsh prehistoric world. If true, Homo juluensis would qualify as fully human, with technology on par with, or perhaps surpassing, Homo sapiens. Here's the bombshell. This discovery suggests Asia was once home to at least 4 different human species. And these weren't just 4 cultures. They were as different from each other as dogs from wolves or tigers from lions. Paleoanthropologists Christopher J. Bay and Shuji Wu identify them as Homo floresiensis, Homo luzonensis, Homo longi, and Homo juluensis. Pinpointing these mysterious species is only the beginning. Many questions remain. Did they ever meet? Were there interspecies battles for dominance? Why did so many human species evolve in such a small part of the world? And why were they all so different? For example, why was Homo floresiensis under 3 feet tall, living in Indonesian caves? How did these real-life hobbits exist alongside Homo sapiens? And the biggest question, where do all these ancient humans fit into the grand story of human history? What do you think? Queen Cleopatra may have been found. Cleopatra, the last queen of Egypt's Ptolemaic dynasty, may at last have been located. For decades, archaeologists have hunted for her tomb without success. Historians have long believed she was buried alongside Mark Antony somewhere near Alexandria, but every attempt to pinpoint the site had failed until now. An excavation team at Taposiris Magna, an ancient temple west of Alexandria, has uncovered a tunnel carved deep into the bedrock. Stretching more than 3,900 feet, the passage has been described by Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities as a geometric marvel. Alongside the tunnel, the team found coins bearing the images of Cleopatra and Alexander the Great, as well as small statues and busts. The excavation is led by Dr. Kathleen Martinez of the University of Santo Domingo, who has long believed Cleopatra's tomb lies in or near this temple. She argues the temple was dedicated to Osiris, the god of the afterlife, and Isis, the goddess with whom Cleopatra identified herself. The location, she says, is both symbolically fitting and perfectly suited as the queen's final resting place. The dig has also revealed a network of underground chambers, some now flooded, possibly due to ancient earthquakes that partially collapsed the temple. Martinez believes that if Cleopatra's remains are buried here, they could still be preserved beneath layers of sediment and rubble. Finding her tomb would rank among the most significant archaeological discoveries of the 21st century, offering unprecedented insight into the final days of the Ptolemaic dynasty, Rome's conquest of Egypt, and the private life of one of history's most famous women. Secrets buried in Syria. Long before Starbucks took every street corner and GPS could guide you to the nearest lunch spot, there was Tel Brak, an ancient megacity in what is now Syria, with no connection to tacos or coffee. For thousands of years, this vast city lay hidden beneath sand, buried under layers of mystery and silence. Some scholars believe it might be the oldest city in the world, possibly even older than Eridu in Iraq. So why did humanity overlook such a massive place? The answer is simple. Archaeologists forgot to check the CIA's Cold War spy archives. And in a twist of irony, the CIA, known for black suits and cryptic code names, became the unlikely hero in a stunning archaeological revelation. The story begins during the Cold War, when the US was nervously watching Soviet activity in Syria from orbit. Between 1960 and 1972, American spy satellites scanned the land below, capturing high-resolution images sharp enough to spot a suspicious missile silo, or, in this case, an ancient civilization. Many years later, in 2007, anthropologist Dr. Jesse Kasana, working with the Smithsonian Channel, declassified and examined these spy photographs. Zooming in on one image, he immediately saw the outline of something enormous buried in the sand. The city of Tel Brak. Its sheer scale has been likened to a prehistoric New York. Founded in the 7th millennium BCE, Tel Brak is roughly 9,000 years old. Researchers believe it once grew into the largest urban center in northern Mesopotamia. The city flourished, declined, and revived over and over, as if trapped in a perpetual cycle. Remember, Tel Brak was already a thriving city 4,000 years before Egypt unified, and not long after the last ice age ended, and Tel Brak is just the tip of the iceberg. Analyzing the satellite images, Dr. Kasana and his team identified roughly 10,000 previously unknown archaeological sites across the Middle East, 10,000 secrets hidden in the desert for a century and a half, right under archaeology's nose. Which makes you wonder what else is still sitting in the CIA's top secret files. Come on, CIA show us more lost cities and more mysteries. The Cold War, spy mission so secret it got sunk. Have you ever heard of the CIA teaming up with the NSA to dive deep into enemy territory and tap the Soviet Union's communications cables? If not, buckle up. Operation Ivy Bells is a true spy story, as dramatic as any James Bond plot, minus the tuxedo, plus a lot more barnacles. From 1946 to 1991, the Cold War loomed over global politics like a thundercloud of tension. The US and the USSR stockpiled nuclear weapons like doomsday preppers hoarding canned goods. Children were taught to duck and cover as if a thin piece of wood could shield them from a nuclear firestorm. Meanwhile, government officials built fallout shelters, and intelligence agencies played the riskiest game of eavesdropping in the world. In the early 1970s, US intelligence discovered a 2,000-kilometer undersea communications cable running from Petropavlovsk to Vladivostok, crossing the heavily guarded Sea of Okhotsk. This was an absolute no-go zone, rigged with underwater surveillance to catch any intruder. The NSA wasn't deterred. They joined the CIA in planning to plant a listening device. The Americans crafted a cover story. They were recovering debris from an SSN-12 sandbox missile that had fallen into the sea. The plan went smoothly. Surface crews collected more than 2 million fragments for defense research, while divers below installed a 20-foot-long wiretap snugly around the Soviets' secret cable. The Soviets were so confident they hadn't encrypted the line, allowing US divers to simply swap out tapes each month and send all the hot intelligence straight to NSA headquarters. Everything was going perfectly until a deeply indebted man decided to sell out his country. Ronald Pelton, a former NSA employee, fluent in Russian but equally fluent in bankruptcy, walked into the Soviet embassy in Washington as if applying for a job. He sold the entire Ivy Bells operation for a mere $5,000 a bargain for one of the boldest Cold War missions, and not even enough to clear his debts. In 1981, a Soviet vessel arrived at the exact spot, removed the tap, and ended the operation. It took 4 years for the US to learn why they'd been compromised. The answer came when KGB Colonel Vitaly Yurchenko defected and exposed Pelton, who was sentenced to 30 years in prison. The captured device is still on display today at the Great Patriotic War Museum in Moscow. 77,000 pages of newly declassified CIA files. KGB Colonel Vitaly Yurchenko's defection also brought down Ronald Pelton. Pelton got 30 years for treason, and the wiretap device from that case is still viewable today, if you happen to be in Russia. It sits on display like a trophy at the Great Patriotic War Museum in Moscow. Now for the big headline. The CIA has just released a massive trove of Cold War secrets, 77,000 pages of newly unredacted files. Many shed light on one of America's darkest political mysteries, the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. According to Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Frederick Logeval, the documents provide fresh clarity on what JFK's assassin was doing in the lead-up to that fateful day in Dallas. More than 2,000 documents related to the case were recently declassified under the Trump administration. But don't expect a smoking gun. There's no hidden second gunman behind the grassy knoll or secret Oswald diary reading, "Today I joined the CIA." It is one after in the safe. The story begins on November 22, 1963. JFK was riding in an open-top car through Dallas, Texas, waving like a rock star when gunshots rang out. The president was assassinated in broad daylight. Lee Harvey Oswald, a 24-year-old former Marine, fired from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. Oswald was arrested, but 2 days later, while being transferred to another jail, he was shot dead by nightclub owner Jack Ruby. Many believe Ruby was hired by the CIA to silence Oswald, whom they suspect was also working for the agency. Officially, however, Oswald acted alone, a lone extremist. The case was closed, at least on paper. Yet, according to a 2023 Gallup poll, 65% of Americans still think Oswald had CIA ties. So what do the new documents say? They confirm what many have long suspected. Oswald visited both the Soviet and Cuban embassies in Mexico City shortly before the assassination. Years earlier, in 1959, he had defected to the Soviet Union, sought asylum, and renounced his US citizenship. Upon returning to America, he was closely monitored. A CIA document dated February 3, 1964, describes his time in Mexico as a distorted travel itinerary that included meetings with local communists. If that's not suspicious, what is? Who meets with Soviets right before killing a US president? Many conclude only a Soviet spy. Reports from the 1990s even questioned Oswald's marksmanship, suggesting he may have been a poor shot, making his deadly accuracy that day even more puzzling. The new files don't resolve the mystery, but they highlight strange contradictions, hinting Oswald may have collaborated with the Soviets and leave open the possibility he once worked for the CIA. the truth remains elusive. Even after this release, more than 99% of the 320,000 JFK-related documents have been declassified. The final secrets may still be hiding in the 1% no one dares to release. The lone wanderer of space. We've all had moments of feeling like a lonely wanderer through life. But that's nothing compared to a massive planet drifting alone through the black void between the stars. No sun, no moons, no companions. Just a ghostly presence slipping silently through the cosmos. We tend to assume planets are bound to a star, orbiting it in stable patterns. But the James Webb Space Telescope has shattered that assumption, spotting an object that belongs to no star system. It has no home to return to, just an endless journey through the deep. And the name scientists have given it, SIMP 663+09, is as unwieldy as a Wi-Fi password, complete with a plus sign. For simplicity, researchers just call it S. S lies about 20 light-years from Earth, with a mass 13 times that of Jupiter. It sits right at the hazy boundary between a rogue planet and a brown dwarf, a strange half-star, half-planet hybrid. Even more astonishing, it spins like crazy, completing a full rotation in just 2.4 hours. Thanks to James Webb's powerful near-infrared spectrograph, astronomers have peered into S's murky atmosphere with unprecedented clarity. Inside are complex cloud layers, shifting temperature zones, and possibly even auroras, its own private northern lights. By splitting S's emitted light into separate wavelengths, the research team led by Boston University PhD candidate Alison McCarthy identified its atmospheric chemistry, like peeling layers off an onion made of gas and plasma. Alongside methane, carbon monoxide, and carbon dioxide, they detected cyclical light changes, suggesting a three-dimensional weather system, potentially with fierce electrical storms. They compare the work to observing Earth from a great distance, inferring the passage of oceans, continents, and clouds from subtle shifts in color. From afar, Earth's blue would brighten as oceans rotate into view, while browns and greens would vary with land and vegetation. On S, similar fluctuations reveal constant cloud and hot gas movement, a dynamic world, despite receiving no sunlight. It's still unclear whether S is a planet, a failed star, or a distorted brown dwarf. It may once have been a giant planet flung from its home system after some violent upheaval, now wandering like an exiled king in the dark. And the bigger question, what force could kick a planet or star out of its cosmic home? This ambiguity is exactly what makes S so fascinating. It's not just a loner, it blurs the very line between star, planet, and everything in between. S is the ultimate space rebel. No star, no orbit, no rules, just a spinning giant cloaked in mysterious clouds, occasionally flashing, as if sending out a cosmic signal. Proof that even the loneliest wanderers in the universe still have a story to tell. A hypersonic spy plane the government swears doesn't exist. There are secrets, and then there's Aurora, a mysterious aircraft many believe is either the U.S. Air Force's biggest open secret or the most elaborate budget fiction ever devised. The story began in 1985, when the Los Angeles Times and Aviation Week spotted something unusual in the Air Force budget. Just one single line item labeled Aurora, tied to a classified aircraft development project. And with that, the aviation world had its white whale, a phantom triangular craft said to fly at Mach 6, powered by nuclear energy, known as Aurora. When questioned, the government responded in its usual way. Huh? What? Never heard of it. But eyewitnesses don't lie. In August 1989, Chris Gibson, a seasoned aircraft observer, was on an oil rig in the North Sea when he saw a triangular aircraft being refueled mid-air by a KC-135 tanker, flanked by two F-111 fighters. Meanwhile, near Area 51, locals began hearing strange, rhythmic, pulsing sounds at dawn, unlike anything they'd ever heard before, like a Harley-Davidson trying to break the sound barrier. These accounts were enough to send the Aurora rumor mill into full flight, and it's barely touched down since. Aurora is rumored to be about the size of a Boeing 737, capable of speeds up to Mach 8, using ramjet engines fast enough to outrun missiles and vanish without a trace. It's the hypersonic spy plane no one in government admits exists. If Aurora is real, it almost certainly came out of Skunk Works, Lockheed Martin's top-secret aerospace lab in California that produced the U-2, SR-71 Blackbird, and F-117 Ampere stealth fighter. Rumors say Skunk Works experimented with hydrogen and methane fuels in the 1990s, though those ideas may have been too risky for real-world deployment. Still, hangars at Area 51 have expanded, new runways have appeared, and sonic booms continue rattling windows in California and Texas. Clearly, something is flying up there, something America will never acknowledge, but that doesn't mean they don't own it. So the next time you see a massive triangular object tearing across the sky, it might not be a UFO, it could be a classified Aurora with a pilot at the controls, a cave, a bullheaded man, and death. A real-life bull-headed man has been found deep in a cave in Ukraine. The daring explorer was the creator of the YouTube channel Fearless and Far. He ventured into what locals call the optimistic cave. It's an underground maze, lined with corridors of razor-sharp white crystals. The cave also contains strange statues of unknown origin. On his journey, he came across a grim reaper figure holding a scythe, a statue of the mythological Minotaur, and a sculpture of a 20th century miner wearing a hard hat. No one knows who put them there. One rumor claims that missionaries who discovered the cave in 1966 brought them in, but this has never been confirmed. The statues are finely crafted, like something you'd see in a plaza or hotel lobby. But here they sit inside the 5th largest cave system in the world. The cave's tunnels extend as far as 460 feet, branching like hollow tree roots. The crystals, formed over 10 million years ago, coat the walls, creating a scene found nowhere else on Earth. The statues are just an odd bonus prize in an ancient, primal underground world, the Jellyfish Galaxy. After the Big Bang, a galaxy sprouted tentacles and drifted through space as if trying to cosplay a deep-sea jellyfish. 12 billion years later, humanity is now gazing at this cosmic creature through the most powerful space camera ever built, the James Webb Space Telescope. This one is stranger than most strange finds. Astronomers believe they may have discovered one of the oldest, weirdest jellyfish galaxies ever seen, squirming on the outer edges of the visible universe. No aquarium required, just look through Webb's lens. It all started when Ian Roberts, an astronomer at the University of Waterloo, was scrolling through JWST images expecting the usual galactic suspects. Instead, he saw something very different, a galaxy with long, ghostly streams stretching off to one side, like interstellar noodles. These gaseous trails look just like tentacles or tendrils, if you prefer, and they are the hallmark of jellyfish galaxies, something many once thought belonged only in imagination. They're called that because they truly resemble jellyfish. They seem to drift through space, trailing gas and star-forming material behind them, and in fact, that's exactly what they're doing. But how do they get these gas tentacles? The answer lies in a process called ram pressure stripping. Here's how it works. Galaxies don't just float alone in the cosmos. They cluster into massive groups so large they defy human comprehension. In these cosmic traffic jams, when a galaxy plows through the thick gas between galaxies, the pressure strips away its material. It's like the wind slamming into your face on a roller coaster, only far more intense. As the galaxy pushes through this dense medium, the force rips away gas and stars, leaving long trails of matter in its wake, exactly the tentacles Earth-based telescopes can see. A side effect of this process is that new stars are born. The jellyfish's tentacles leave behind enough raw material to form an entirely new galaxy. The scale is so vast that, compared to it, Earth is like a grain of sand on an endless cosmic beach, dotted with nebulae, planets, and gas. So, what makes this jellyfish galaxy so special? While scientists have found many closer to home, spotting one 12 billion light-years away is unprecedented. It was born when the universe was still young and turbulent. Roberts and his colleagues were stunned to find something so dramatic and ancient, especially since jellyfish galaxies are hard to catch. They're not exactly rare, but they're short-lived. Their tentacles usually vanish quickly as they move on, so catching one in action is like snapping a photo of a hummingbird mid-flap. Finding one deep in the cosmic past is like discovering a fossil that winks at you. Scientists are calling this a once-in-a-century find. If you ever thought the universe was quiet and empty, remember that out there are galaxies drifting with long tentacles, wandering through space and leaving worlds behind. The giant cat in the sand. On a calm October day in 2020, while much of the world was doom-scrolling through the pandemic and banana bread recipes, Peru's Ministry of Culture dropped a bombshell on the archaeology world. A giant cat carved into a hillside near Nazca. The feline sprawls across the desert, stretching 121 feet long, as if it owned the place. If you're picturing Garfield after an oversized lasagna nap sprawled across Peru, you're not far off. But this wasn't some idle alpaca herder's prank. It was crafted centuries ago, long before humans had satellite maps to check their work. The geoglyph lies within the famous Nazca Lines region, vast, mysterious desert artworks, visible only from above. The Nazca Lines have long been one of Peru's greatest enigmas. They're usually credited to the Nazca culture, but this cat's distinct artistic style suggests it belongs to the Paracas culture, which existed around 200 BCE, long before the Nazca began etching monkeys and hummingbirds into the desert. The bigger mystery is how and why this was made. Scientists still don't know how ancient people could create such massive, accurate designs without seeing the whole picture. Try going to the beach at low tide and drawing a 100-foot cat in the sand. You'll see how tough it is. Did they build observation towers, wing it, or maybe they had extraterrestrial help? No one knows for sure. What is certain is that cats held symbolic importance for both the Paracas and Nazca cultures. Felines appear frequently in pottery and textiles. Apparently, ancient Peruvians loved cats almost as much as the ancient Egyptians. The only surprise is that they didn't mummify them. The Templar Knight's secret cave. At the bottom of a deep shaft lies an ancient mystery that has baffled scholars for centuries. The opening leads into one of the world's most enigmatic caves, possibly carved by the Knights Templar, or perhaps by an unknown group of godless heretics. Royston Cave was discovered in the summer of 1742. It was a shock for a group of workers digging a foundation for market benches when they struck a buried millstone. The stone acted like a manhole cover, sealing the mouth of a vertical shaft that dropped into darkness. In the 18th century, when children still worked in mines, the laborers sent a boy with a candle down first. The townspeople of Royston crowded around, hoping the boy would find treasure, but there was none. In the flickering candlelight, he saw a broken cup, a human skull, and walls covered from floor to ceiling with carvings. To this day, no one knows who carved out the chamber in solid chalk, who made the images, or whose skull it was. The cave's manager, Nicky Patton, says the fascination of Royston is that no one can answer the millions of questions it raises. Still, there are clues. On the walls are crude carvings of saints. There's Saint Catherine with the torture wheel that killed her at 18, and Saint Lawrence roasted alive on a gridiron. At first glance, the carvings seem entirely religious and Christian, but then you notice most of the saints are being tortured. There's also Christ on the cross, alongside strange pagan imagery like the fertility symbol Sheila na gig, depicting a woman with exaggerated genitalia. Overall, the carvings are both crude and unsettling. Who would make such a mix of martyred saints and pagan icons? One theory is that it was the work of the Knights Templar, perhaps used for secret initiation rituals nearly 1,000 years ago. But if so, why so much pagan content? Were the Templars truly Christian, or just pretending? It's also possible the cave predates the carvings, perhaps made by ancient druids. Interestingly, it lies at the crossing point of two ancient trackways, known as ley lines. One of them is the Michael Line, running through Stonehenge and the Avebury Stone Circle. Whether or not you believe in ley lines, the cave does sit at the true intersection of two historic routes: Icknield Way, from Norfolk to Wiltshire, and Ermine Street, a Roman road linking London to York. Either way, Royston is at the heart of an ancient crossroads, but the mystery of who built the cave and why remains unsolved. The biggest problem is that there are no historical records of it at all, suggesting it was a closely guarded secret. Recently, the Royal Armouries Museum in Leeds tried to date the carvings by style and concluded they may have been made around 1350, a century after the Templars were executed. Perhaps it was the work of surviving Templar remnants, men obsessed with both martyrs and paganism. The Maya god of thunder. During the construction of the Maya railway line across Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, archaeologists uncovered a small yet exquisitely crafted statue believed to represent Ke-Awil, the Maya god of thunder, serpents, and prosperity. The statue depicts an animal-headed figure with large eyes, an upturned snout, and a cigar jutting from the top of its head. It's a rare find. Only 3 other Ke-Awil statues have ever been discovered, all in the city of Tikal, Guatemala, making this the first ever found in Mexico. The railway project has been a goldmine of discoveries. A 1,000-year-old Maya canoe, 8,000-year-old human remains in a cenote, an entire ancient city, and tens of thousands of artifacts and structures. Archaeologists, geologists, and historians are struggling to keep up with the flood of finds. Is this an ancient star map? A boulder the size of a car tire is stirring fierce debate among archaeologists. It's 3,000 years old and covered in strange markings. Experts can't agree whether it's an ancient star map or just the doodles of someone with too much time on their hands. The disc-shaped stone was found a few years ago at an ancient hilltop fortress in Italy. Both its front and back bear carvings, 29 in total. Some researchers believe the dots might represent the brightest stars in the night sky. If true, a few history books will need rewriting, as this simple slab could be one of the oldest star maps ever known. Previously, a 2,000-year-old astronomical calendar found in a Chinese tomb had wowed archaeologists. But this discovery has stirred even more excitement, though not everyone's convinced. Ed, an astronomer from Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles, argues the carvings don't necessarily match real stars, and any resemblance could be pure coincidence. By contrast, astronomer Po Molaro from the Trieste Astronomical Observatory insists they match actual stars, with accurate positions, proportions, and alignments for the constellations Scorpius and Orion. So, who's right? Both are respected astronomers, yet they offer conflicting interpretations of the same artifact. Adding to the mystery, this disk isn't unique. Alongside the Trieste find, 2 other examples have been discovered, one near Gradina and another on Croatia's Brijuni Islands. all date to the late prehistoric period, a transitional era between prehistory and recorded civilization, spanning roughly 1800 to 400 BCE. By then, astrology already existed. Greek poet Hesiod wrote that people used constellations Orion and Pleiades to mark planting seasons as far back as the 8th century BCE. Maps like this could have spread from one community to another as humans sought to decode the glittering heavens above. Long ago, at the bottom of an ancient sea, there may have been a civilization so old it would make the pyramids look like the neon globe outside a Las Vegas casino. A sunken city estimated to be 9,500 years old has been found resting quietly in the Indian Ocean, an elder sibling to Atlantis, and perhaps even older. It's one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the past quarter century yet. Outside of a few YouTube channels and late-night radio programs, almost no one talks about it. Rumor has it, world governments are deliberately stalling any further study of this astonishing submerged metropolis. It began in December 2000. While the rest of us fretted over the Y2 Kelvin bug or pirated music on LimeWire, a team of Indian oceanographers from the National Institute of Ocean Technology was working in the Gulf of Cambay. They weren't hunting artifacts, just testing pollution levels. But instead of finding only silt and garbage, their sonar detected vast geometric shapes on the seafloor, structures, straight lines, right angles, an entire city. And it was no joke. The site measures about 5 miles long and over 2 miles wide, the size of a modern town. Divers and dredgers retrieved pottery, beads, sculptures, even human bones. Radiocarbon dating revealed some items to be roughly 9,500 years old. This wasn't a myth, it was a real city, predating the Indus Valley civilization, often called India's ancient Egypt. In quote, the Indus civilization boasted cities like Mohenjo-Daro with advanced street grids and urban technology, but it arose 4,000 years after this underwater settlement sank, meaning it must have been built by a different, earlier culture. But who were they? The project's lead investigator, Dr. Badranath R. Aaron, a name as mysterious as the discovery, believes the site was once part of an advanced civilization wiped out by rising seas at the end of the last ice age. He even suggests it may have been the mother culture of the later Harappan civilization. This earlier society, he theorizes, was destroyed by a massive flood, perhaps the same deluge mentioned in the Bible, or another cataclysm altogether. If true, this city might be the strongest evidence yet for a world that existed before the Great Flood. And perhaps that's why research seems to have been frozen. In the 25 years since its discovery, the site has been largely ignored. The question is why? The superpowered dogs of Chernobyl. Scientists have discovered that the dogs living near the Chernobyl disaster site have developed something extraordinary, literal superpowers. They carry genetic mutations that make them immune to hazards that would sicken ordinary dogs. These animals are not only resistant to radiation, but also to heavy metals and pollution confirmed through blood tests. Researchers collected samples from 116 stray dogs thriving inside the Chernobyl exclusion zone, and most showed these unusual adaptations. The nuclear disaster was devastating for humans, but oddly beneficial for wildlife. Today, the area teems with life, free from human interference. Wolves have returned. Blood tests show the dogs have adapted to one of the most toxic environments on Earth, where radiation levels are 6 times the safe human limit. The Chernobyl meltdown happened on April 26, 1986, when Reactor 4 overheated and exploded, releasing massive radioactive fallout. An estimated 900 stray dogs now roam the area, most descended from pets abandoned when residents were evacuated. Blood samples sent to the US for DNA analysis confirmed that these dogs' genetic structures have shifted significantly, enabling them to live healthy lives in lethal conditions. It's led to a joke that, in a nuclear apocalypse, only cockroaches and dogs will survive. Wolves and frogs might make it too. Eastern tree frogs in Chernobyl have turned black, yet remain just as healthy as their green cousins. The tomb with a deadly secret. Archaeologists in Central America have unearthed a gold-filled tomb, but inside lay a deadly secret. It belonged to the Cocle culture of Panama, which thrived thousands of years before the Panama Canal existed. The Cocle lived in the Rio Grande River Valley, crafted pottery, and led simple lives. After the Spanish arrived in 1550, the culture faded, and by the 20th century, it survived only in legend. El Caño Archaeological Park was discovered in 1927, containing numerous pre-Columbian burial sites. In 2011, archaeologists uncovered the grave of a Cocle warrior buried with gold treasures and 25 other bodies, possibly attendants, sacrificed to follow him into the afterlife. Recently, a 1,200-year-old tomb was excavated, belonging to a leader who died around age 30. He was buried atop a mound of pottery with gold jewelry, earrings, bone flutes, and the body of a woman. likely sacrificed to accompany him beyond. This attendant sacrifice shows the gods of Mesoamerica were indeed bloodthirsty. The Roman cup of something disgusting. In England, archaeologists digging in an ordinary Anglo-Saxon grave made a startling find: an ancient Roman cup placed beside the deceased's head, filled with pig fat. The girl buried there died about 1,500 years ago, still in her teens. She seems to have been well off, as her grave contained valuable goods. Among them was an 1,800-year-old Roman cup, glazed in red, blue, and turquoise, decorated with crescent and heart motifs possibly imported from France. Chemical analysis of residue inside revealed high lipid levels, most likely pig fat. But for what purpose? It may have been a skin treatment. Romans used animal fat as a moisturizer, or perhaps it was medicinal. 6th century records note the Franks ate raw pig fat to treat parasites, or applied it to wounds. The grave was found in the village of Screby, Lincolnshire, within a cemetery of 49 other early Anglo-Saxon burials, circa 480 to 540 CE. Yet this one stood out, and her identity, along with the true purpose of that cup, may forever remain a mystery. Part 37. Ancient fire and hidden power in Peru. In Peru's Supe Valley, archaeologists have uncovered something 5,000 years old, and so fiery it could burn a hole in the timeline of the Americas. Hidden inside a pyramid-like structure, built long before the Great Pyramid of Giza dreamed of becoming an Instagram backdrop, they found a fire altar, not the remains of an ancient marshmallow roast, but a massive ceremonial altar over 20 feet wide, within a building at the Era de Pando site of the Carl Supe civilization 2,000 years older than the Olmecs, who themselves predated the Maya. In other words, it's incredibly ancient. The Carl Supe dominated Peru before Stonehenge existed. They built cities by 3500 BCE, held fire rituals, and ran administrative centers, while much of the world still struggled with barley farming. Era de Pando alone contains 48 major structures and numerous ceremonial spaces, enough to make a modern cathedral blush. Today, Carl Supe is a barren ruin, but it must once have been lush, a possible early capital of humankind. The newly found altar lies in a perfectly rectangular ceremonial courtyard, reached by descending steps from a grand sunken hall. This was no casual gathering spot for camel herders. It was reserved for elites. Inside the altar pit, archaeologists found bead necklaces, quartz crystals, fish bones, seashells, and crops offerings to the gods. Such fire rituals carried both spiritual meaning and political weight, reinforcing elite authority as they lit the sacred flames and chanted prayers, while the common folk looked on from afar. Fire back then wasn't just symbolic, it was the link between earth and sky, between rulers and ruled, between the visible and the unseen.